hosted by the Vietnam Institute of America Studies and Hùng Vương University, together with the National Autonomous University of Mexico and the Embassy of Mexico in Vietnam. First of all, we wish to extend our warm greetings and thank you all for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, Mexico is one of the first Latin American country to establish the diplomatic ties with Vietnam and one of Vietnam's most important partners in the Americas. Up to now, Vietnam and Mexico relations have reached new heights and suitable for the two countries to establish and upgrade their comprehensive partnership framework. So within the framework of APEC 2023, we would like to organize this seminar in order to provide the opportunities for the scholars, for the researchers and the diplomats to share their perspectives, their research findings and experiences in creating a resilient and sustainable development in the future, and contributing to promoting the Vietnam and Mexico relations in the coming time. So joining us today, it is our honor to welcome His Excellency Mr. Alejandro Negrin, the Ambassador of Mexico to Vietnam. Mr. Pablo Lozano, the Deputy Head of Mission, the Embassy of Mexico to Vietnam. What is he? Dr. Trần Việt Anh, the Acting Vice Chancellor, Hùng Vương University, Ho Chi Minh City, and he's going to joining us online because he couldn't come here. The Ambassador Phạm Văn Quế, the former Ambassador of Vietnam to Mexico. What is he? I don't know. The Ambassador Nguyễn Văn Huỳnh, the former Ambassador of Vietnam to Brazil. Yes. And please allow me to introduce Professor Nguyễn Xuân Trung, the Director General of Vietnam Institute of American Studies, together with the VIAS members. And we are also delighted to welcome the presence of researchers and lecturers and delegates who are participating online and offline today from various agencies and institutes with us today. And once again, thank you so much for joining us today. So with much honor, we are now going to listen to the opening speech delivered by Professor Nguyễn Xuân Trung. Please welcome him.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Hanoi, and good evening, Mexico. His Excellency Mr. Alejandro Negrin, Ambassador of Mexico to Vietnam. Mr. Dr. Trần Việt Anh, Acting Vice Chancellor, Hùng Vương University, Ho Chi Minh City. Director of UNAM, China, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really happy that the cooperation between the VIAS and UNAM is maintained and become more and more substantive. We have a very meaningful annual activities. Last year, we jointly organized two very successful seminars discussing issues of mutual interest of both sides. That is cross-border cooperation. This time, we discuss larger issues that is of great concern of Vietnam today, which is sustainable development, green development. In this dialogue, we invite a large partner to join with us. That is the Hùng Vương University in Ho Chi Minh City. It's far in the south of Vietnam. Far around 1,200 kilometers from Hanoi. Yeah, very fast. A prestigious and rapidly growing university in Vietnam. Therefore, today participants besides the experts from the VIAS and experts from some university in Hanoi areas. Also includes the experts from Hùng Vương University in Ho Chi Minh from the South Vietnam. On behalf of VIAS, I express my gratitude to Ambassador and his colleagues for support. And thank you, UNAM, and thank you, Hùng Vương University, for the cooperation and participating in this event, with this dialogue very successful today. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the opening speech from Professor Nguyễn Xuân Trung. And now please welcome Mr. Pablo Lozano to host the seminar. Please.
Yes, but before, can you hear me?
Yes, Pablo.
Sí.
We are going to hear the words of the ambassador, and then we are going to give the floor to our director, Adalberto Noyola, and then to the director of PUEA, Alicia Giron.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay.
So, if
So
you allow me,
now,
we can give the floor now
Okay.
to Ambassador Alejandro Negrin, please. Ambassador.
Thank you very much. Dear friend, Dr. Nguyen Xuan Chung, Director of Vietnam Institute of American Studies, VAS. My friend, Dr. Adalberto Noyola, Director of UNAM China. Dr. Alicia Giron, Director of the University Program of Studies on Asia and Africa, UNAM. Dear ambassadors and researchers of VAS that are here today, it is an enormous pleasure for me to welcome you all in Mexico and here in Hanoi and also in Ho Chi Minh City to this new academic dialogue, Mexico and Vietnam Binational Cooperation Perspectives, APEC Forum 2023. The partnership between the Vietnam Institute of American Studies of the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences and the UNAM is fostering a profound understanding between our academic communities. Without a doubt, we are now on a virtuous path of the institutionalization of our academic dialogue. Indeed, this is the third occasion that we have an academic seminar between our institutions, and it has become one of the most successful projects of academic cooperation between our countries in recent years. And I am especially pleased to highlight the significance of this seminar, very close to the APEC Leaders Economic Summit in San Francisco, the United States. This coincidence gives greater relevance to our discussions because both the presidents of Mexico and Vietnam will participate in that economic summit. Both our countries have a clear vocation towards the Pacific. Just to give you an example, the mutual membership of both Mexico and Vietnam in the called CPTPP has not only facilitated substantial trade growth, but has also consolidated a robust economic partnership. Notably, Mexico has emerged as the primary buyer of Vietnamese products in Latin America, more than 10 billion American dollars in 2022. So the topics that will be discussed in today's seminar, in particular nearshoring and supply chains, will be very important inputs for strengthening the bilateral relationship, which both governments we are now discussing. So once again, I express my deepest gratitude to all the scholars, institutions, and participants who have contributed to making this seminar a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now we will ask Dr. Adalberto Noyola, Director of UNAM China, to give us a message. Please, Doctor.
Thank you very much for your invitation. And Mr. Ambassador Alejandro Negrin, dear friend, Dr. Nguyen Xuan Trung, Director of the Vietnamese Institute of American Studies, VIAS, of the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences, Dr. Alicia Giron, Head of the Program of Asia and African Studies, dear colleagues, dear attendants, it is with a great pleasure that I take the opportunity to welcome you all to this academic dialogue between UNAM and VIAS on binational cooperation perspective facing the APEC meeting in 2023 next month. This virtual meeting is organized by PUEA, the Program of Studies for Asia and Africa at UNAM and VIAS, with the support of the UNAM office in China and the Mexican Embassy in Vietnam. I think it is worth mentioning that this is the third academic event in which VIAS and UNAM have jointly participated. The first was 1 year ago, September and October, in a series of 4 lectures by scholars from UNAM Research Center for North America, CISAN. The general subject was the Mexican-US border relation on their different aspects. Then the second event was on April this year, with a session of 2 lectures from researchers of VIAS addressing labor and trade aspects in the Vietnam-China border. Now, with this third meeting, I am very optimistic that our 2 institutions will continue the collaboration on academic exchanges. Based on this, I propose to explore the possibility of formalizing the academic cooperation by an institutional agreement between our 2 institutions. If such is the case, we at the UNAM office in China we will be very much interested in helping during this process. Thank you very much again, and have a successful meeting.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, I will invite Dr. Alicia Giron, Director of the University Program of Studies of Asia and Africa in UNAM, to give us her kind words. Please, Dr. Giron.
Thank you very much. And first of all, it's a pleasure to be here and to work with the UNAM China, and also with the Vietnam Institute of American Studies, and of course with Vietnam Academy of Social Science. We are very proud of this event. And as an economist, I have to give some data that I have just taken for the World Economic report of the International Monetary Fund. And it's very interesting how Vietnam has increased the GDP. For example, I want to say that for this year, it is 4.7%, while in Mexico it's 3.2%. And for example, about inflation, in Vietnam is 3.4%, and in Mexico it's 5.5%. And another thing that it is very interesting is the population that we have. Vietnam has 100,399 persons, and in Mexico is 131,230 persons. So it's, while in Vietnam there are at least 100 million people, in Mexico we are around 130 million people. And it is very interesting how the Vietnam belonged to the IMF in September of 21st, in 1956, while in Mexico our first meeting was in the 31 of December in 1945. Well, this is some data to see, because it is very interesting to see how the GDP has increased in Vietnam, and even it is higher than in China. And one of the reasons that the IMF says is that the inflation, it is because it is decreasing the GDP of China, but I don't think that is true. Sometimes the IMF don't give the truth, especially when they manage the data. But one data that is really very important and that we can compare is the report of the World Economic, the forum, the Davos Forum, is the Global Gender Gap Report of this year. And for example, in the ranking, Mexico is in the 33 place, while Vietnam is in the 72%. And I just take two datas, is the economic participation and opportunity. The women in Vietnam, they are very close to have the 100% in the parity. They are in the 31 place, while Mexico, women Mexicans in the economic participation opportunity are 110 place. So this is very interesting, because most of the women that in Mexico are in the labor. We are not in parity. But one is surprised, and this is very important, because the surprise that we are the lesson for Vietnam and for other parts, other countries in the world, is that in Mexico we have the parity in the Congress. We are in the 15th place, and Vietnam is in the 89. Well, with of data, well, we have a wonderful program, and we have here two persons, two academic, very intelligent women that they have been collaborating with us for a long time ago. She is Claudia Maya. She is from the Center for Research and North America of the UNAM, and also the PhD Sophie Ávila, who is a colleague from my institute, from the Institute of Economic Research at UNAM. So I think this is, for us, it is our first activity with the Vietnam Institute of America's Studies, and also with the Vietnam Academy of Social Science. So I'm very happy to be here with our ambassador, Mexican ambassador to Vietnam, Alejandro Negrit, and also with the director of Vietnam Institute of American Studies, the VAS. So was only some data as an economist that I have to show, because it is very important how these two countries have been well, how we have had the economic development. So okay, that for me that will be, and because I have to open this this activity, well, it is a pleasure. And in Mexico we are 8:25 at night, and I think that in Vietnam it must be 9:25. So thank you very much. Thank you to give me this opportunity to celebrate this moment, and thank you, Ambassador, our Mexican ambassador, and also to our director of the VAS, Nguyen Xuan Trong. And we hope to see you soon. We hope to see you soon here in Mexico, and to have, well, in present, well, now all the events are hybrid, but we hope one day you will arrive here at UNAM, and for the PUEA, it will be a pleasure to host your activities here. Thank you very much, and congratulations, and thank you, Dr. Alberto Noyola, to have this opportunity with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just as an introduction, just to remind that we are going to have two tables. First, we are going to have a cycle of two conferences about supply chain resilience, and then we are going to have a second table about climate change and environmental sustainability. The first conference is going to be first presentation by Dr. Claudia Maya from CISAN UNAM, and then a presentation by Dr. Leyland An about diversifying supply chains prospects for Vietnam and Mexico. I would like to introduce Dr. Claudia Maya. She's a PhD in economics from UNAM, a master in economics from the University of Missouri, Kansas City, and a master in finance from the Faculty of Accounting and Administration from UNAM. She belongs to the National System of Researchers and was in charge for the project Banking Reconfiguration, Monetary Circuits, and Financial Innovation, New Processes for Finalization in North America. She's a multi-published author of different books and chapter of books and articles, and she currently works as a full-time researcher at the Center for Research of North America and a professor of graduate studies at the Faculty of Political and Social Sciences in UNAM. Her presentation is entitled Advantages and Disadvantages for Mexico and Vietnam in the Face of the New Regional Trade Relocation Strategy. Please, Dr. Claudia Maya, thank you for having you here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Good evening, Mexico. Good morning, Vietnam. It is my pleasure to participate in this webinar, and my gratitude to PUEA, CISAN, APEC, and BAS for organizing this important event. Now I want to share my screen to start with my presentation. Okay, I hope we can see my, yes, there we go. Okay, I have titled this presentation as Disadvantages for Mexico and, hold on. I cannot see. Well, advantages and disadvantages of nearshoring for Vietnam and Mexico in this new reconfiguration of trade tendencies. Well, we have that the concept of reshoring and nearshoring and getting momentum. This process is not new and is not a new term. We have to understand that this process started around 4 decades ago, where that was characterized by a fast globalization process and industrial production. These were drastically restructuring, reflecting the decisions of many offshore stages of production to explore, to explore decision of many companies to offshore stages of production to exploit cheaper resources and access markets and technology and take advantage of geographically dispersed production networks under global value chains integration model. This process had been analyzed by UNTAC in his report 2023. We have that after financial crisis of 2007 to 2008, international production has slowed down with slow growth of trade and foreign direct investment. This may be explained by changes in the international context with rising labor costs, rising uncertainty, and protectionism. On the other hand, we have that COVID-19 pandemic and the outbreak of the war in Ukraine limited the supply raw materials, forced business firms worldwide to look after alternative suppliers. In the case of United States, the transnational corporation, TNC, from now on, were particularly affected with the GVC, or global value chains, were disrupted due to the lack of global supply of essential raw and intermediate inputs for production. Inflation appeared and prices rose disturbingly, affecting competitiveness and cost at a firm level. We have the malfunctions of this integration trade model were exposed, as well as the vulnerabilities of TNC highly relied on imports from far, particularly from China. We have to understand that at this point, United States firms have to reorganize and trying to look for another kind of reshoring. They call it nearshoring, and trying to organize the production with some countries that were more integrated to the TNC, or transnational corporation, and the value chain. From the macroeconomic point of view, this process implies a redesign of traditional trade policy as well as monetary to contain the advance of China, to improve American TNC conditions from a domestic and friend-shoring relocation. This process did not imply the end of the globalization, but a strategy from competing China's TNC. This was very clear in the new UNMCA chapter 33. This process is not privative of United States, since offshoring practice were challenged in the Great Lockout. It means since COVID pandemic. Some big companies started to reconsider their international location decision to eventually reshoring or backshoring. It means bringing production back into the countries or in its proximity, or at least some part of the value chain. However, corporations' location and relocation decisions do not only impact firms' efficiency and profitability, but also have remarkable effects in the worldwide economy, entailing a transformation in international division of labor and reconfiguration of global production that need to be assessed. This development has been seen as an opportunity for Mexico that can contribute to the economy's growth across different sectors. Some authors affirm that nurturing can help Mexico to add an additional 3% to its GDP in the next few years, but the optimism is not widespread across the academic. United States firms are moving part of its offshore production from China back to the United States, that means backshoring, and relocating some production to Mexico, that means nearshoring. The proximity with the United States makes a great deal for Mexico that the rest of Latin America lacks. Cultural aspect and migration contribute to the integration, the two economies, Mexico and United States. The integration of these two countries' economy is embodied in the NAFTA and the UMSCA agreement since early 1990s. Geographical proximity, salary difference, and government tax support makes Mexico a good host for foreign direct investment from United States. And United States firms are the main investors in the border of Mexico. Many American states' principal partnership is Mexico, and from early 1990s, international commerce increased in Mexico with NAFTA and UMSCA's degree. So those are the elements that make this integration function, and the relocation is in favor of Mexico. This is not the case for the rest of Latin America. Mexico is from this region, from Latin America region, is the most favorite country for being near to United States. In general, advantages for general advantage and disadvantage of nurturing, I have to emphasize two things. First, that the nurturing could be analyzed at the firm level, but the lack of data and the lack of information make it very, very difficult to make a clear case for nearshoring. And on the other hand, we just have a general tendencies that give us a glimpse or give us some understanding of this tendency and of this process. This process, even if it's not new, it is evolving. I mean, it is ongoing and it's not a finished process. So we just have some clue, some glimpse of these advantages and disadvantages based on the historical integration in Mexico to the United States. So we have the advantages are the reduction costs of TNCs, transnational corporations. This is very important because during the pandemic and with the global and the inflation process, cost increased severally, affecting the markup for these TNCs. Another advantage is GVCs are more integrated in all these processes. We have more foreign direct investment as a host country. We can produce more, and international commerce increase. That means exports and imports increase. Another advantages are more technification in the labor force, production with value added, and that's important because it's what the main country is looking for or the TNCs are looking for. More economic integration is present, but there is one question. It is not allowed for labor-free transit. That means that migration is restricted. And even if it's a good advantage for a corporation, it's not an advantage for the host country. Another advantage is the improved salary rates. And possibly salaries could be more competitive, but never be equal to the main country or related to. Some disadvantages can be at the macro level, more economic dependence of the host country that will follow the commerce cycle of the TNC. We have seen that in Mexico very clearly, since our GDP growth depends on the good performance of the American economy. And when it declines, Mexican GDP also declines. So I see this as a disadvantage. On the other hand, we have economic policy in favor of free trade that affect domestic industry process. That means that all the policies that favor free trade, it has some negative effects in the domestic industry, especially when with the exchange rate and interest rate. Another thing we can see is in the case of Mexico and United States, less knowledge transmission due to a strict property rights structure that are very clear in the new UMSCA. Another disadvantage could be big government investment infrastructure that may benefit only the integrated region and less and leave behind less integrated regions. Production according to the needs of the TNC is another disadvantage because it limits host country needs. And the whole macroeconomic policy is directed to trade and to international trade and limit the internal growth industry. Okay, the internal growth in the industry. We have some graph that will show us the development of the main data. So we have that foreign direct investment in Mexico come basically from the United States, that is the blue line. As we can see, China has a very little foreign direct investment in Mexico. Canada is the second partnership or the second important country that invests in Mexico, but we have also Korea, South Korea, and Germany. But the difference between the rest of the countries and the United States is very, very high. Another fact that we have is the foreign trade in Mexico from 1990 to 2002 has increasingly very rapidly, and it is obvious because Mexico opens its economy from 1980, and obviously with the trade, the Telecan or NAFTA trade, it grows much more. Obviously, imports are higher than exports, and Mexico has somehow a deficit in its foreign trade. But the important thing is as follows. Mexico has a surplus with United States. Mexican exports to United States are higher than imports from the USA. And I think it was the discrepancy with Trump when he claimed that Mexico was guilty of the bad situation of American economy due to this Mexican surplus in trade with them. Another thing we can observe here is that United States, these are the imports. We have basically most of exports. Sorry, those are exports because I cannot see the title. We have most of export from to United States, but also the imports are basically from there. China has a very low participation in our imports. It's just that red point, as well as Canada. So Mexican economy is completely integrated to the American or United States economy through the American firms. Just to give us an idea, in 1984, the 83% of our exports were headed to United States. In 2004, almost the 90% of our exports headed to United States. Finally, due to the slowdown of our American economy in 2021 and 2021, we just reached around 80% of our exports heading United States. So this gives us another glimpse, another point to understand that Mexico was the favorite nearshoring place, or was the favorite place for nearshoring American firms much before the COVID crisis or the recent crisis. So our economy has been very integrated in all sense. Well, we have seen now the imports, yes. But what does Mexico import from? Let me see. What does Mexico import from United States? Refined oil, cars, motor vehicles, low voltage protection equipment, and integrated circuits. As we can see, from 2011 to 2021, refined oil has been our main export. And on the other hand, let me see. On the other hand, raw oil, cars, video screen, motor vehicles has been included in the export. I mean, we import these main products, but we also export them. That means that the main firms brings their brings what they need and re-export it. That's very interesting. But most of the exports had a big import content. Mexico has been basically a manufacturer and platform from exporting the same products Mexico imports. So I think this is an important issue because Mexico doesn't add too much value to their export on the one hand, and the other, just some sectors are benefited from the nearshoring, as we can see. The rest of the economy is not as integrated as this sector showing here for the international trade. And I think it has to be considered in a policy where domestic economy has to be equal promoted or equal supported as the foreign sector. We have some comparison. We have some parallel issues with Vietnam, but some difference also. As we can see, Vietnam imports most of their goods from China, and much less from United States. Japan and Singapore are also important, and South Korea, but basically China is the main supplier of Vietnam. And on the other hand, China and Vietnam export much more to United States and less to China. So that process of integration or that similarity with Mexico integrated to United States is not reproduced in the Vietnam case. It's difficult to understand how integrated Vietnam is to the Occidental, to American economies, and how integrated is to China. So I cannot express this that similarity. I see more like one form to China China products to enter to United States can be through Vietnam. Another thing, Vietnam main imports are telephones, LCDs, woven light blue fabric, integrated circuits, elaborate and electric batteries. And this is important before this period, I think 20,000 years, no, in 2000, Vietnam was basically raw material exporter. But now Vietnam added more added more value to it's exported, as we can see in this graphic. So finally, we can make a contrast in contrast to Mexico and Vietnam imports. Vietnam imports more from China and exports more from United States, and its economy seems to be more integrated to China. On the other hand, Vietnam passes to import raw materials, to import more value-added goods. This point is important for firms that are interested in the nearshoring. It implies that technology and knowledge is being applied to the production process, and Vietnam passes to export raw material, to export more value-added goods, such as transmission equipment and the future. In case of relocation of investment, China or other countries from Asia will be more interested in moving to Vietnam. No ASEAN, United States. Finally, different conditions underline Vietnam economy compared to Mexico. It is required to analyze with more exactitude both cases at firm and macro level. But as I mentioned at the beginning, the lack of data at firm level and the ongoing process inhibit to make a profound analysis in this topic. So those are my remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Claudia Maya, for your interesting presentation. Now I would like to yield the floor to Dr. Leyland An for her presentation on diversifying supply chains, prospects for Vietnam and Mexico trade relations. Just very quick, Dr. Leyland An has a PhD degree in economic law, professor at the Institute of American Studies, the Vietnam Academic of Social Sciences in Hanoi. She has worked as a senior researcher in social sciences, focusing on economic law, foreign trade, and foreign relations. Some of her academic publications consist of research on the economic in Vietnam, global relations of Vietnam, the pandemic of COVID-19 and its impact, labor migration, and legislation on the protection of migrant workers' rights in Latin America. Please, Dr. Leyland An.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Firstly, I would like to send my sincere thanks to Dr. Nguyễn Xuân Trung and my Mr. Alejandro Negrin, and also my colleagues from UNAM University and Hùng Vương University to give me such a wonderful opportunity to express my findings about the topic diversifying supply chains and the prospects of Vietnam and Mexico trade relations. Please, okay. As we know, in general, this is the circle of a normal supply chain. We can see that a supply chain is a network of companies and people producing and delivering goods or service. And the components of the supply chains include producer, vendors, warehouses, transportation companies, distribution centers, and retailers. Okay. And when the supply chain disruptions, when any of entities of the supply chain is disrupt, the global supply chain will be disrupted, and it can happen in any process of a supply chain, maybe in the production or sales or distribution of specific goods or service. And nowadays, we've heard a lot about the global supply chain disruption, right? And what is the major forces of the supply chain disruption? As we know, there are many forces. For example, natural disaster, pandemics, and health issues, market demand and supply risks, and price fluctuations. Sometimes it's come from the supply chain security, like cyber attacks or logistic disruptions, failures or delay. And recently, I think there are two main forces happened and bring about the global supply chain disruption. Please move to the next slide. No, next two, please. Okay. As we can see, I give three main causes. Firstly, it's a trade war from the United States and China. Secondly, is the COVID-19 pandemic, and thirdly is the Russia and Ukraine conflicts. So, okay, because I will move to very fast. So, how to overcome the global supply chain disruptions? Of course, we can read a lot about the resolution to kind of overcome the supply chain disruption. But I think there are two main resolution we can talk about. Firstly is reshoring, that we heard a lot about the former presentation. Reshoring is going focus on the nearshoring or friendshoring. This nearshoring will bring the production close to the territory of the consumption. And secondly, the supplier diversity. Yeah, the supplier diversity is incorporating diverse owned businesses, suppliers, and vendors into a company's supply chain and business practices. Please move to the next slide. Next one, please. Okay. So how Vietnam and Mexico benefit from the supply chain disruption? Sometimes supply chain disruption not only bring the war, not good consequences, but sometimes it's can bring another chance for the war, like Vietnam and Mexico. So Vietnam and Mexico can become the major players in global supply chains. I think so. This is the two figures that I want to show with you. It's not, please move to the next one, please. No, I have no mean to compare between Mexico and Vietnam about the value added to gross export, but from two figures, we can see the opportunities and prospect of the Vietnam and Mexico in the road in global supply chains. Because of the lower labor costs, tariffs, and investment barriers, in Vietnam and Mexico now are very attracting companies, like the companies from the US. Or we heard a lot about the like GoPro, Apple, Microsoft, or Google have already moved, or at least they announced plans to move entities of their global supply chains from China to Vietnam and Mexico, right? And this opportunity take gain advantage of their low labor cost that I have mentioned about, and proximity to the Chinese and the US market, respectively. Both countries, that Vietnam and Mexico, have increased their value added in global supply chain since 1990. That I showed to you on the screen. The value added include indirect domestic and foreign contents used in the final exports. Moreover, Mexico and Vietnam entered into the bilateral and regional FTAs with most major trading partners, and CPTPP is the first multilateral agreement between the two countries. Please move to the next. Okay. Okay. And this is my main point of my presentation. That the opportunities from the CPTPP can bring to Mexico and Vietnam to promote the bilateral trade relations. The comprehensive progressive agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership, as known as TPP 11, that it's a trade agreement among 11 countries, and the 11 members have a combined economies representing 13.4% of global gross domestic products. And this is make the CPTPP become one of the world's largest FTA by GDP. Yeah. Mexico and Vietnam have been partners of CPTPP from 2019, and Mexico is currently Vietnam's the second largest trading partner in the Latin America region, and Vietnam become the 8th trading partners of Mexico in the Southeast Asia region. Because US and China trade war continue escalating, so some CPTPP member may be caught in the middle, right? This situation can cause can make two countries use this agreement to mitigate potential economic impacts. So CPTPP then open up the new export market and other opportunities. Okay, move to the next. Yeah. There is no next, please. Next slide, please. Okay. There is some figures I want to show with you. There is indicators. The trade turnover between Vietnam and Mexico annually have a very we can see we have many the prospects in the trade turnover between Vietnam and Mexico, right? Because it growing annually, and this is the leading export growth rate to the CPTPP market for Vietnamese goods, and with the market share of the Vietnam export goods in the Mexican market. Only we can see that because it's very fun, and okay, but you can take a picture and zoom. You can see that there is plenty of opportunity to continue growing export by taking advantage of the CPTPP agreement between the two countries. From the recent achievement between the two countries in trade relations, I would like to come to the Vietnam and Mexico trade relation prospect. Please move to the next one, please. Next one, two. Next, two. Okay. Firstly, we can see that Mexico and Vietnam relations have a lot of potential. At the former speaker that have talked. First of all, the two countries are member of the CPTPP and therefore becoming trading partner of each other. Second, considering the framework of the bilateral economic cooperation, as well as the context of the restructuring global supply chain and the current need to ensure food security, Mexico have become a significant partner for Vietnam. Because Mexico has a potential to export products to interest to Vietnam, such as beef, pork, agricultural products. In contrast, Vietnamese products also complete Mexico's supply chain. Yeah, and we also know that Mexico have 14 FTA with 50 countries around the world and trillions of dollars in trade turnover around the world, which provides the sector with enormous opportunity for both sides. In the coming time, continue to prioritize implementing measures to maintain the promote trade exchange by taking advantage of the incentives of the CPTPP and diversifying the structure of import and export goods between the two countries, exporting products with each country's strength and facilitating the market open process. And finally, Vietnam wants to increase the value of trade and investment turnover with Mexico, focusing on the fields of energy, telecommunication, high-tech agriculture, and high-value-added industry. However, still between the two countries have some challenges. So how do we can overcome the challenges? Please move to the next slide. Thank you. So to realize these growing supply chain opportunities, both countries need to address many challenges. Firstly, I'd like to mention to the resolution that to truly capitalize on their potential, both countries have to considerably improve their overall business environment, include the policy and some trade law. Yeah. And secondly, two countries need to build more logistic-related infrastructure. To move into the high-tech global value chains, both countries will have to increase their pool of skilled labor. That I mean, in Vietnam, we still are lacking the very high skilled labor, especially in education and training. Lastly, I would like to mention that two countries adopt trade and investment-friendly policies, such as simplifying export and import processes at the border and strengthening investor protection to offset the resourcing that I have mentioned above, policies and advanced economies. So I want to say more, but because of the limitation time, so I will sum up to my presentation here. Thank you for the attention. And please send me any other question after. Thank you.
Thank you. With this presentation, we finish the first half of our seminar today. I think we'll be in order to have a quick Q&A session. If anyone is interested into making any request or question about the two presentations that we have seen until now about Dr. Maya and Dr. Leland. And so please, we are open now for some question and answers of the presentation that we already have. Yes, please.
Okay, thank you very much for my very interesting and comprehensive presentation, both from Mexican side and Vietnamese side. After listening just the two presentations, we identify that both countries have some similarity. For example, both countries border to the superpower. Vietnam might be border with the mainland China, and Mexico border with the United States. And sometimes might be just only very first glance we think the US might be swallow Mexico, and mainland China try to swallow Vietnam. So it's very difficult for both countries if we deeply integrated with such as this superpower. So this is, I think, these are the big challenges for both countries. If you don't want to try to escape from the circle, maybe magnetic force like the US huge market, maybe they can try to swallow Mexico economy and nearly the same to Vietnam. So I think maybe the most important here we try to follow the independent diplomatic policy. Try to keep independent freedom and maybe some I think separation at a relatives level. The second one, I think both countries should have autonomous policy to increase resilience inside countries by setting up value chains, independent value chain for maybe strategic material like a semiconductor and some other kinds of high-tech know-how and some other kind, nearly the same. So first one, maybe we like up some information to make comparisons between the qualified human resource of Mexico and Vietnam. As my point of view, I think Mexico qualified human resource is better than Vietnam. Yeah. So Mexico has maybe make a lot of investment into the United States. So if for Vietnam, we make very little investment into mainland China. So we can say this maybe disadvantage for Vietnam, but disadvantages for Vietnam. So maybe generally speaking, we can see the trade volume of Vietnam and Mexico nearly the same. By 2020 and 22, the trade volume of Vietnam and Mexico about $700 billion US. I think it's a very interesting point. And now how we try to enhance Vietnam maybe setting up a goal, maybe to try to double volume of trade by 2025 about $1 trillion US export and import by 2025. But I don't know about Mexico. But how Mexico can enhance the trade volume with the rest of the world, especially with Vietnam? No, whether or not Vietnam and Mexico and try to negotiate and sign the bilateral the free trade agreement between Mexico and Vietnam. Because nearly the same, but we have the trade volume get about 6 billion US dollar. So whether or not we can do that for the future. Okay, thank you very much. I highly appreciate it.
Thank you. Please.
Thank you very much. Because I am the ambassador of Vietnam in Brazil, but I follow some development of the Latin America. I think that in Latin America, there are two big power. It is Brazil and Mexico. And the two have high trade turnout between Vietnam and Brazil and Mexico. This year, maybe we reach about 6 billion. So, but Mexico have a different position because Mexico is a country with Vietnam. We have the member of the APEC, the member of CTBT and United Nations also, but Mexico is very near to the USA. So the experiences of Mexico to deal with a weaker neighbor is, I think, we need to learn from Vietnam. And I think that Mexico is a big country also because its GDP is ranked about 12th in the world ranking of GDP. So I think that Mexico and Vietnam have very good traditional relation, not only political, but trade and especially something about it's also the culture relation. So I have an impression of the last visit in June of Deputy for Minister of Trade of Vietnam, Đỗ Thắng Hải, to Mexico, and that time the Undersecretary of the Vietnam of the Mexico Foreign Trade Minister said that Vietnam is a strategic market of Mexico. So that now is time how to improve the relation between Vietnam and Mexico, especially in this moment, because we have a good relation, but economic relation we need to improve. I hope that in 2025, the trade between the two countries will reach 10 billion. I think it's, we hope that it is easily. So I think that because Mexico is a member of the NAFTA also, because of its trade relations. So through Mexico, we can have something to work with USA, with Canada, or with Latin American. So it is, I think, it's a very important for that. So I think that once I want to say that Mexico is a very important kind of partner of Vietnam in everything, because its foreign policy, its potential of the economic development, and especially the geopolitical aspects. So to improve the relation with Latin, we improve the relation with Mexico. It means that we also improve the relation with Latin American and because and NAFTA. So with that, I think that I hope in the future, after this seminar, we will have something more to improve our relation. And from the academic relation, I think that we need to improve the relation with some institutes of the Mexico, like some university and some other institutes. So with it, I want to thank you for let me to speak very shortly about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think we are in order to continue our presentations. Now we are going to speak about climate change and environmental sustainability. We are going to have a presentation now from Dr. Sophie Ávila from UNAM. She's a senior researcher at the Economic Research Institute in the National Autonomous University and a member of the board director of the National Coastal Resilience Laboratory. She has received the National University Distinction for Young Academics in the area of Research, Economic Administrative Sciences in 2012 and is member of the National System of Researchers Level 3. Dr. Ávila holds a PhD in Environmental Economics and Ecosystem Management from the University of York, a Master's in Integrated Tropical Coast Management by the University of Newcastle upon Tyne, both in the UK, and she is a biologist from UNAM. Please, Dr. Ávila, we are ready for you.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I am really glad to be here, and it's an honor to share all my knowledge and the research that I'm running in Mexico with you all. So I will share my screen. And I also want to thank especially to Adalberto and Alicia, who invited me for this meeting. So I don't know if you can see the whole screen of my presentation.
Sí se ve, Sophie. A lo mejor si lo pones en pantalla completa estaría mejor. Perfecto, ahí va. Súper. Gracias.
Okay, it takes a little bit of time. Okay. Okay, so the presentation today is gonna be about climate change, and I will share with you a view that I've been working for this topic, which is a systemic perspective for studying climate change. And I will talk also about some of the policies in Mexico on this topic. So first of all, I would like to share with you those two images. I think the first one, it's not possible to see it, but anyway, I will mention what it is about. And I want to say that, first of all, that we are in an Anthropocene area. That means that most of the environmental effects and the problems we have now in the world are caused by anthropogenic causes. That means by economic activities by humans. And so we already have disrupted many of the processes in the world. Specifically, for example, we have already passed the threshold for land use changes, for pollution, and of course, climate change. The image you can see in the right side of my presentation, it's the number of places that already have transgressed those boundaries that I already mentioned. So the red ones, the red points are the places where we are already transgressed 4 or 5 of those environmental problems. So as you can see, Mexico and of course in Asia, we have many problems related with those topics, and climate change is one of those problems we already have at a global scale. So that is important because even though I will talk about climate change, we need to be aware that climate change is one of the problems we are facing. And that brings me to the next slide that I want to share with you, is that, of course, as I said, climate change has been caused by human activities. They are responsible for global warming. And but also these climate change effects are being affecting many other aspects in the world. That is, for example, they are affecting water availability and food production. They are affecting health and well-being. They are affecting cities, settlements, infrastructure, but also biodiversity and ecosystems. Of course, all those impacts are causing a lot of economic losses. And just to have you, just to give you an idea, of course, we've been increasing the global temperature around 1 degree, and that has caused around 5 times more of disasters than in the 70s, and that is causing more than 7 times to the costs compared to the 1970s. So what we can see here is that social aspects such as economic activities and so on are causing climate change, and climate change, it is also causing economic costs and are causing as well biodiversity and ecosystem losses. So we are facing here a feedback loop between social and nature relationships. So my key message in this slide is that it is not possible to talk about climate change without really looking into those feedbacks, how those anthropogenic activities are causing climate, and at the same time those are causing environmental and also economic and social causes. So for instance, we can see there are impacts on food production. Here we can see maize yield has been changing around the world, but also fisheries yield and many other agricultural or even other economic activities such as tourism, for example. So in relation to Mexico, I don't know why we cannot see my image here. But what I wanted to say is that compared to other countries in G20, Mexico probably is not one of the most that is causing the most of the emissions. But it is among the 15 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean contributing with 608 million tons and 1.3% of the global emissions. So, I mean, Mexico, even though it is not probably the most important country in terms of emission, those emissions are growing, and we have a lot of problems causing those emissions. So, for instance, here we have some of the data showing which are the main sectors causing global emissions. So first of all, we have 78% in terms of fuel, fossil fuel energy use. We have also 16% caused by agriculture. In terms of agriculture, of course, methane is one of the main gases that are emitted by agriculture. So around, in that particular case for methane, 46%. And so that's why I want to focus into one or two examples into this sector. So agriculture is not only causing emissions, agriculture and livestock, of course, is not only causing methane emissions, but also it is one of the main causes of land use changes. So they are also contributing to deforestation. And those greenhouse gas emissions have increased by 51% between 1990 and 2019. So Mexico, of course, the tendency is very, very high. Another problem we have is that in Mexico, the amount for the budget for the Ministry of Environment has been decreasing in the last 10 years in a very important way. So, and also we have been assessing the costs of environmental loss, and they are around 1.5% of the GDP. And the percent that is used for addressing those problems, those environmental problems, are just 0.45% of the GDP. So we have really a huge difference. There is a very important financial gap between what we are investing and what we are causing in Mexico. So what I want to show you today is an example of what we did in order to link those feedbacks. What I was saying is that in order to look into how economic activities are causing like climate change and how we can address changes within those mitigation and adaptation activities, and how can that can be a positive way for addressing climate change. So it is the same. We cannot see the image, but so we are doing that in the National Resilience Laboratory, which is an institution where we are participating many academic institutions, and the main point of that institution is to have 7 observatories within all the country, where we can monitor the interactions between social and nature, and one of the main topics, of course, is climate change, in order to give support to decision-making based on scientific data using long-term data. So for that, we are taking a framework that is called social ecological system resilience. And in order to see those interactions, and well, basically these are some of the definitions for social ecological resilience. It goes further, much further than the adaptative concept that has been used in many other concepts. But for example, the IPCC is already very close to this definition on resilience. So it is more about how those systems are evolving on time and space, and how their feedbacks and function and structure are reorganizing in order to face different stressors. One of those, climate change, for of course. So the previous depends on the system capacities to cope, adapt, and transform, as well on systemic aspects such as diversity and connectivity, for example. So in general terms, climate change is not conceptualized in a systemic approach, and I will show you just some of the results we have been running in one of the projects. So this is a short figure, a short photo of one of the results of the projects we did in Mexico, and it was about trying to link biophysical aspects. I will show you in a moment about exactly what, on coffee yields and ecosystem services as 2 inputs for well-being. Ecosystem services are all the ecosystem benefits that are received from ecosystems to well-being or to humans. That means, for example, provision of natural resources for many activities, or that is also, for example, water availability, climate regulation, or soil and other many processes, ecological processes that are used into the economics or the social well-being. So the main point was to build or to do a spatial dynamic model. We have been doing that in other cases as well. We are running in the laboratory another dynamic simulation model for tourism as well. But this one was for an agroforestry coffee system. And so the idea was to link those interactions and in order to analyze the historical trajectories and linking yields and ecosystem services. So, okay, so that was the methodological process. So we had to do firstly, of course, some analysis on land use changes, on ecosystem services modeling, and those how we're going to change with 2 scenarios on climate change. And so with that, we could see some tendencies on those aspects. And this was done also including some different types of of coffee growing. Some of them more intensive and some others more sustainable. That means on shade coffee, for example. Okay, so this study was run in the region in Mexico, in the coast of Oaxaca, which is the South Pacific coast of Mexico, which is a very important area for coffee production, and it's quite well conserved in terms of vegetation. We also have in that region tourism in the low part of the watershed. So I'm really sorry we cannot see the images. I don't know why, but anyway, so the effects of climate change were, of course, that we had an increased temperature in the area and a decrease on precipitation. But important thing here was that decrease caused that increase on temperature and decrease in precipitation caused a decrease in coffee yield of around 50%, and also an increase of one of the rust, which is a disease for that plant, on 90.5%, and all the ecosystem services, we measured carbon, water yield, and sedimentation were also affected. So what we then assessed was which were the main scenarios where we can have win-win solutions. That is, where we had high yield farms and also farms with the most high level of ecosystem services. Ecosystem services are very important for the livelihoods of people, but also for the production of that kind of agroforestry. And we could see that under climate change scenarios, the number of farms decreased from 1,119 farms to 712 or 595. So this is a very specific type of modeling, trying to assess how agents will also react to those scenarios. So the important message here is, one, with these kind of models, we can see trade-offs and the interactions in a more systemic way between social and nature relationships to assess climate change effects and also to assess climate change possibilities to recover. In that case, we can see that shade can be under 40 or 60%, and we could have the same level of coffee yield compared to more intensive production. And of course, under climate change scenarios, the most vulnerable areas, and that has been said in other countries as well, will be more affected. So what is going on in terms of Mexico climate change policies? So this example is only to show you those interactions, and I will show how the policy is going into that direction or not. So under the Paris Agreement, Mexico has pledged to reduce its greenhouse emissions by 22% and the black carbon emissions by 51% by 2030. But under the COP27 in 2022, Mexico national determined contributions were more ambitious and increased by 35%. So that is quite high. And so what does that implies for Mexico? This is just a general picture of all the different steps within the policy, the Mexican policy about climate change. Sorry, it is in Spanish, but I will explain that in a minute. So first of all, we had a law on climate change. Then we had a fund created in 2012. And then we started to create an intersectoral commission where different sectors agree to work together in order to have the national program and the strategy and the national strategy. Those instruments are important because they are linked to the commitments that Mexico agree within the United Nations COP for climate change. So in those instruments, we can see how each one of the sectors agree and what kind of actions they will do. Actually, we have now, for example, a national plan for adaptation, because at the beginning, most of the strategies were phased to mitigation, as in many other countries. So we have been advancing quite a lot in terms of climate change, more in terms of the legislation and strategies, and than in budget or in actions. So we have some advances in, for example, in some states, we already have plans of climate change specific. We have also the initiatives of integrating biodiversity in different sectors of the economy. But we still have a lot of problems, as I said, in terms of environmental loss. We have insufficient budget for sustainable production and conservation, and we still have most of the environmental problems I already mentioned. So even though we have some actions in our strategies, they are not really functioning as we would like to. We also have some of advances in terms of adaptation, and here we can see some of the programs that are concerned about many of those activities, and the main actions for adaptations are, for example, more conservation and restoration, comprehensive water resource management, etc. But when we see really the national budget for facing all of those problems, it is not enough. So one of the conclusions is that one of the very important actions to do is to avoid traditional subsidies oriented to fossil fuel energy. We still have a lot of policies oriented to that kind of energy. We started an energy transition, but now it's stopped. So probably we should need to start it again. We also have carbon taxes, revenues, and market that need to be revised. And climate change needs to be a transversal priority for all sectors, but not only in programs or more in action. And as I said, the environmental budget has been decreasing. But there is something very interesting, is that we have interesting advances on the Mexican Banking Association that launched a program to identify sustainable activities that can be financed by Mexican banks or Mexican other companies and global, for example, that is also sustained in terms of which are the main activities that really are helping to reach sustainability, and they are not greenwashing activities. And that is important also for the international norms for social and environmental aspects that need to be complied by many of the enterprises in the international enterprise. And the Bank of Mexico is creating a national strategy for sustainable finance. So that means that really the private companies and probably also non-private companies are really looking to climate change more seriously, and they are looking that there is a high risk if we are not really taking that into more serious stages. So my key messages for you today is that we need to have more systemic perspective to study and confront climate change and the importance of measuring resilience in that terms. And in order to reach Mexico commitments, more investment and actions on mitigation and adaptation and financing are needed, aligned, of course, to social equity, justice, and sustainable development. And of course, science has a crucial role on conceptualizing, monitoring, and implementing actions for a resilient future. And I think that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And finally, I would like to invite Dr. Bui Thi Phuong Lan to give us her presentation on climate change and Vietnam tourism, the cases of Giang and Quoc. Very fast, because it's almost midnight in Mexico. I would like to say that Dr. Phuong Lan received her PhD from Harvard University in 2003 and her master's degree in American Civilization from the University of Texas, Austin. She's currently the main researcher at the Institute for American Studies, where she was formerly Deputy General Director under the Vietnam Academy of Social Sciences. Her interests and writings include issues in contemporary history, environment, education, and literature. Her major publications include the book Vietnam-U.S. Relations, 1994-2010, Vietnam Academy for Social Sciences Publishing House. She was a contributor to New Literary History of America, Harvard University Press in 2009. Please, Dr.
Thank you. Thank you for the pre-introduction. Good morning, distinguished guests, colleagues, dear colleagues and friends, and hello, Mexico. It's so excited to be connected to you, and please allow me to extend a cyber handshake to Mexico. It's a wonderful country. More than 40 years ago, my father visited Mexico, Acapulco. And when he came back, he had so many exciting stories to tell. So I'm delighted to have the opportunity to participate in this academic dialogue. And I would also like to thank the conference or the organizers for having come up with this wonderful topic that is sustainable development. And just by chance, I think the doctor who presented before me had just offered a wonderful background, scientific facts to climate change. And now I would like to offer you a deep dive into climate change and Vietnam's tourism. And I would like to bring up the two cases of Ha Giang and Phu Quoc destinations to illustrate the points. Now, first of all, Vietnam is a land of timeless beauty. It really is. Tourism is one of the strongest transnational movements on the globe. As a newcomer to modernity,
Can you put your presentation in screen?
Is a leisure pursuit for millions of Vietnamese. A long stretch of
Excuse me,
land.
Professor. Can you put your presentation in full screen?
It is in full screen. Here we are watching it in full screen. I don't know what would be the trouble. Let's try it again.
Nada más que le piquen el botón del atril para que la veamos en pantalla completa, Pablo.
Okay, what are telling us, please, or if the presentation can be put in full screen so everyone can see it in their Zoom screens. Sorry. We're trying to share the presentation. Do you see it now? It's okay now?
No, you haven't shared the screen.
Okay. Because I think he doesn't speak English. The presentation, they need to share the screen where the slideshow is so everyone can see it in the... Okay, let me see if I can go on here. Yes, but he's trying to do it. Let's see if he can do it now.
Okay, now you're sharing the screen. Eh?
Yes, now, and now? That was great. I imagine now you can see it.
Well, we can see it, but it's not in full screen, but I think we can continue. No
we
problem.
can continue. I'm so sorry, Doctor. Please continue.
Okay. So I would like to emphasize again that Vietnam is a very beautiful country. A long stretch of land facing the East Sea, resting on the Trường Sơn mountain range, and reaching into the Gulf of Thailand is very beautiful, home to a great biological diversity and scenic beauty. Our tourism industry emerged early after the war, but it was not until recently that it has emerged as a key contributing factor to the national economy. Vietnam is also one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change. Herein lies the crux of the issue. While there is no perfect sustainable tourism, it is in everybody's interest to construct an effective strategy to foster a strong symbiotic relationship between tourism and the natural environment. Humanity is facing an anthropogenically caused climate emergency. Climate change is affecting every country on all continents. It will also affect all regions in Vietnam. Climate change and tourism are inextricably linked. Estimates have that about 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions are due to tourism. 3/4 of the CO2 emissions from tourism are transport related. That's predicted to double by 2050. By then, our planet may have warmed 1.5 degrees Celsius, above pre-industrial times. The overall aim of my presentation is to offer a Vietnamese perspective to discuss Vietnam's COP21 and 26 commitments, how tourism affects and is affected by climate change, and offer a call for action for workable solutions. And I would also discuss the cases of Hà Giang and Phu Quoc to illustrate the immediate impact of people's attitude towards nature. Hà Giang is one of the northernmost provinces bordering China. Phu Quoc is a southwestern group of islands in the Gulf of Thailand. And my choice of those two destinations is not only based on them being very popular tourist destinations, but also to illustrate the difficulties that the Tourism Board of Vietnam have to deal with because of our country is very long. It stretches north and southwest. Now, first of all, I would like to talk about the political will driving Vietnam's COP commitments. Our moment in time, humanity is facing an anthropologically caused climate emergency. The 1992 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change in Rio de Janeiro was an all call to prevent dangerous man-made anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Climate change temperature rises with the likely dominant cause by human activity. Yet it contained no enforcement mechanism. Goals would not be achieved if responsibility were left to individuals only. The world has changed its approach to mitigate climate change. Despite still being a developing country that has only started to industrialize since the last 30 years, pursuant to the Paris Agreement or the Paris Climate Accord, Prime Minister Pham Minh Chinh has committed Vietnam to the Common Responsibility Principle. At COP26 summit in Glasgow, November 2021, he pledged Vietnam will achieve net zero CO2 emission by 2050, which is a very ambitious goal. The Prime Minister also emphasized this as an inevitable requirement in order to mitigate global warming, and he promised to place climate change mitigation and adaptation efforts and the recuperation of nature at the highest priority in all development decisions, at the highest ethical standards at all levels, all branches and sectors, enterprises and citizens. Vietnam regularly reports its own contribution to mitigating global warming. Since 2008, it has issued many strategies and plans at national level regarding climate change, adaptation, renewable energy, or green growth, etc. The government has issued various laws and decrees to protect the environment, to adapt with climate change, promote the use of green energy. In this chain of command, provincial authorities each has organized different activities at provincial levels geared towards the goal of reaching net zero emission by 2050. There has also emerged a nationwide effort to start building a carbon trading mechanism, but that is still waits to be seen. The subsequent step is to formulate and implement national mitigation and adaptation plans for the tourism sector. Yes, Vietnam is the hidden charm. The hidden charm would be in the mountains, in the oceans. It is a very attractive tourist destination. But the important point I want to point to is, how does tourism contribute to climate change? An act that is so refreshing as tourists as travel could contribute greatly to climate change. Greenhouse gases have risen since the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, 1740s and 50s, from human activities. By 2050, our planet may have warmed 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial times. Vietnam is forecasted to be one of the 5 countries to be most affected by the phenomenon, depending on the greenhouse gas scenarios. Temperature and precipitation trends, sea level rise, deforestation, soil erosions, and landslides is expected to be a major threat for Vietnam. Tourism, from transportation to hospitality, accommodation, food and beverages, activities, is a resource-intensive industry and contributes to CO2 driving climate change. Global responsibility in tourism is on the United Nations agenda. At the United Nations World Tourism Organization Summit on Climate Change in 2021, Vietnam committed to the reduction of 25% of greenhouse gas emission by its tourism industry by 2030 compared to 2010 level. Tourism is also closely connected to SDG number 13. Tourism is at the intersection of both being affected by the impact of climate change as well as contributing to it. Findings from ADF-supported study in Vietnam has shown that the average macroeconomic damages are 30% higher than direct damages. This fact is crucial not to just stop at the sectoral level of analysis, but also the need to understand how macroeconomic linkages might amplify the inevitable direct climate change impacts, and adaptation constitutes an important factor in the development strategy for Vietnam. Economic sectors are not, as can be seen from this study, economic sectors are not independent from each other or from the rest of the world. They interact through intermediate consumptions and inputs, also through financial linkages. Next, I would like to focus on international cooperation to mitigate climate change. Internationally, Vietnam has joined different organizations, including Asia Community Initiative, initiated by Japan, with the goal to promote carbon emission reduction and energy transition. The US plays a pivotal role in global climate change impact, both positively and negatively, I have to say. On the one hand, it is the largest global emitter of CO2. On the other, the Biden administration is determined to take the lead in mitigating climate change, positioning the issue at the forefront of its national security strategy and international relations. Both Vietnam and the United States have pledged to make mitigating climate change one pillar of the bilateral relationship. The US President's Special Convoy for the Environment, Mr. John Kerry, has specifically stretched technology transfer in renewable energy and promised to assist Vietnam in our efforts to achieve COP26 goals. The USAID is also helping Vietnam develop wind, solar, wave power, and management. President Biden has pledged to quadruple US aid to developing countries to $11 annually by 2024. U.S. efforts would undoubtedly help channels FDI in tourism, bringing clean technology in aviation and accommodation. For Vietnam, U.S. assistance provides a valuable opportunity to move to green technology and sustainable development. Though tourism is not the specific focus, the overall policy specifically in energy transition and waste management would undoubtedly help reduce CO2 emission generated from tourism activity. The growth of Vietnam's tourism has been quite recent. Tourism, regardless of being separated by oceans or continents nearby, is no longer a one-event trip. It has become our modern-day lifestyle. It has become a part of our culture, especially among the young. According to Vietnam's Tourism Research and Development Institute, between 2016 to 2019, tourism has emerged as a leading economic sector. Contribution of the travel and tourism, both international and domestic, to Vietnam's GDP fluctuates substantially in recent years, mainly due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2018 and 2019, it contributed 8.39% and 9.1% respectively before it was severely disrupted by COVID-19 restrictions. In 2022, Vietnam reopened its border to international tourists. The industry has since then shown signs of recovery. In this industry, protecting the natural environment is pivotal because it nurtures the environment for which tourists arrive, upon which the local economy depends. We move next to another important question, that is, what can Vietnam's tourism do to mitigate climate change? Now, first of all, a strong sense of place is often key to a visitor's destination choices. While tourism is key to a destination's well-being, as often its most viable and sustainable economic development option, tourism also contributes to greenhouse gases, global warming, and climate change. The key question is how to coexist for mutual benefit. It is in the tourism sector's own interest to play a leading role in the global response. If left solely in pursuit of economic gains, tourism would lead to a rise in CO2 emissions and climate change impacts on the very destinations that have drawn tourists. The challenge is to find a balance for human overall well-being. For this to happen, drastic changes and precautions which need to come from within are needed from the tourism industry. Constructing a roadmap for climate neutral tourism. It is the management of the travel industry that needs to let go of the status quo in the face of climate change crisis impacting destinations. Raising environmental awareness would lead to changes in behavior by individuals. Pro-environmental behavior shifts could also be faster than waiting for national climate policies. In order to reach the goal committed, Vietnam needs to work out an effective strategy framework for the nationwide tourism sector. Vietnam is implementing many solutions, including the following directives. Number one, developing community-based tourism based on the participation of local community. This type of tourism is expected to ensure sustainable development, as well as helping to elevate the tourist awareness about environmental protection and climate change. Number two, transitioning to renewable energy, including solar, wind, small hydroelectricity stations, and biogas as pertaining to the goal of reaching 20% of renewable energy in total electricity production by 2030. Number three, lowering energy consumption for transport and accommodation. Today, there exists technology to fully decarbonize the hotel sector by reducing their absolute carbon emission by 2050. against a 2010 baseline. Number 4, improve waste management everywhere and anywhere. Now we'll plunge into the cases of Hà Giang and Phu Quoc. These prime destinations in Kiên Giang province and Hà Giang province are highly environmentally distinctive areas known for spectacular scenic beauty. They represent Vietnam's distinctive geographical features of the high mountains and the sea. These destinations highlight the diversity that Vietnam's efforts in tourism need to take into considerations: local action, global impact. Both destinations show positive impacts of tourism, including learning foreign cultures, changing lifestyles. Both destinations provide distinctive forms of people and nature interaction. Both cater for multiple types of tours, visitors. Both are prone to anthropocentric environmental degradation and global warming impacts to land, mountains, and sea life. Numbers of visitors compared approximately. Now I have to make a caveat that the numbers fluctuates greatly in Vietnam when it comes to tourism and depending on the sources that you consult. So these numbers are approximate. Sometimes when the numbers go down, they do not give you the specific numbers. They just give you the general tendency that things have gone bad, that numbers have gone down, but the exact numbers vary among the different sources. In 2022, at the onslaught of COVID-19 pandemic, about 1.1 million visitors came to Hà Giang, a reduction of 30% compared to 2019, while Phu Quoc received about 7 million, almost unchanged compared to 2019. In 2021, Hà Giang received more than 2 million, almost double the numbers of visitors, while Phu Quoc received a slight increase of 2% only, totally about 7.3 million. In 2022, as the country opened up after COVID-19, visitors to Hà Giang increased 147% to 2.7 million, among whom the numbers of international visitors increased 7 times. The numbers of Phu Quoc is still unclear, but the revenues have increased. By 2023, visitors to Hà Giang keeps increasing, while the numbers for Phu Quoc dropped drastically. During Independence Day holiday, which used to be very popular, hotel occupancy rates in Phu Quoc have dropped to 27% only. By October, the provincial government announced the number of visitors have gone down by 50%. So you see those drastic numbers, and I just want to reveal that when I signed up for participating in this dialogue, I just chose those 2 destinations before those exact numbers came out. So I was very surprised, but I'm glad I chose those 2 destinations. Now, Hà Giang offers many creative types of ecotourism, being at high elevation with special geological and climatic features. Vietnam is a well-known ground for traditional urban cohabitation, ethnic customary laws, less reforestation, treating human as a part of the larger ecological community can teach the urban visitors many things. Given its diverse ethnic composition, a visit to a pharmaceutical garden in a Dao ethnic home, picking the herbs for one's own Dao bath and massage, is both therapeutic and environmentally enlightened. To a certain degree, agricultural tourism helps form a symbiotic relationship with environmental protection. In montane areas, it helps preserve both ethnic cultural traditions and their environment. I have been reminded by the conference organizers that I have to be fast. So anyway, I think my slides is on our Zoom website, Zoom account. Now I will just deep dive into Phu Quoc just to make the presentation a little bit more complete due to time shortage. Okay, so the numbers have told us the drastic drop in tourists coming to Phu Quoc. So let's have some analysis. In both cases, concrete goals and action plans remain absent in regards to climate change. Phu Quoc is one of the destinations that have developed the fastest in Vietnam, as sustainability is increasingly becoming the most fundamental key competitive advantage. Phu Quoc is losing out due to poor waste management, trash and environmental degradation, both in terms of poor city planning and natural habitat. Its climate change mitigation goals put forth sounds lifeless, almost echoing that of the government's commitment in conformity with national goals. According to Dr. Nguyễn Anh Tuấn, Director of Tourism Research and Strategy Institute, Phu Quoc is losing out due to losing its brand as a pristine oceanic tourist destination, rapid urbanization, and environmental degradation. Management starts at the local level. They include minuscule issues such as waste management, untreated water waste, plastic waste, environmental vandalism. After 5 years hitting the limelight for being the highlights for travel destinations, the two destinations of Hà Giang and Phu Quoc have diverged into completely different trajectories. So I want to jump to the conclusion towards net zero that Vietnam has committed. In general, due to its dependency on nature, the tourism industry cannot flourish under the extreme impact on environmental degradation. So the efforts needs to come from all parties. It's not the conference of the parties, but it's the participations of all the parties that's required here. Please show the trash at Ham Ninh Beach. Please show that slide for me, please. The trash. Next slide, please. Okay, không em cho lại cái slide trước ấy, có rác ấy. Okay, anyway, I'm forcing us to lose more time anyway. So before I end here, I want to appeal to make a call to immediate action. And we should not blame Phu Quoc or Hà Giang because this is a global issue. Globally, the clock is running to potentially environmental tipping point when catastrophe become hard to avert. According to UN Secretary General, March 2020, we are currently way off track to meeting either the 1.5 degrees Celsius or 2 degrees Celsius targets that the Paris Agreement requires. Like most industries, tourism remains in slow motion as it begins to tackle its negative impact on the global ecological system, whose well-being is vital to its business. Prospects of the tragedy of the commons suggest the need for committed collective action. Hope is placed on human awareness and also decarbonizing technology. Well, I think here I want to conclude that Vietnam is not doing enough. I have to conclude, unfortunately, that Vietnam is not doing enough, but it is racing. It is working towards a carbon market, which is will help Vietnam in terms of technology, in terms of trading, CO2s, and that would definitely help Vietnam decrease the CO2 emissions. Vietnam, in a way, represents the earth, the globe. The globe is stunningly beautiful in the universe. Vietnam's natural environment is stunningly beautiful. Vietnam's approach to tourism is a community-based endeavor. As such, commitments of the private sector and all individuals involved is critical for any effective climate response mechanism. Vietnam will work closely with international parties to find new ways to cooperate across the industry to reach a more sustainable future. Vietnam is the land of timeless beauty. Our civilization stretches back thousands of years. Our perseverance has withstood the test of time. It is our duty to keep this beauty timeless. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Doctor. Today has been a very productive day. I will suggest both BIAS and UNAM to eventually interchange contacts of our academics that has been participating in this seminar, so we can incentivize some joint research and some other participations together. It's already past midnight in Mexico. This has been a very long day. So this long seminar is proof that how interested we are in each other. And just to finish, I will invite Dr. Giron to give us her closing remarks.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Yes, it has been a long seminar, but I think this will be the seed because our colleagues can contact between them and they can continue both research. And the first session, I think, was very interesting, especially when they talk about the new sharing and after the lockdown, how has been going not only for Vietnam, but also for Mexico, and how they are diversifying the supply chain. So I'm very glad that Claudia Maya and also Leland Ann has been here. And it was incredible, the conference that our doctora Sophie Ávila and Bui Thi Phuong Lan has given us. I think climate change is very important. And one of the things that I think that when Bui Thi Phuong Lan at the end said that Vietnam hasn't done too much for the climate change, I think all the countries haven't done too much. And this is very, well, it's a preoccupation, and we have to at least continue with this issue. And also because other thing that it is very important, and it was said in the first session, is how the banks right now, there is a conscientization of many banks, not only in Mexico and Vietnam, but all around the world. And the principal big banks, at least in USA, are trying to finance investments that are really preoccupied with the climate change. So for us, it has been a pleasure to be here. And well, thank you very much to UNAM China, who has coordinated this great seminar. Thank you for the Vietnam Institute of America's Studies, and also to the Social Science Academy of Vietnam. Thank you very much. Good night in Latin America, and good morning, and have a good day and a good weekend to Vietnam. Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the invitation.